Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you to the first ever Transspatial Tavern book launch. Patty Jackson, our friend, was famous before there was an internet. She's a writer, she's a teacher, a gamer, an award-winning player of roles, and a skilled equestrian. Tonight, she is here with us to talk about the launch of her new book, Forging a Nightmare. Friends, I present to you Patty, Miss Jackson if you're nasty, Jackson.
Hi, everybody. Hello, friends.
Patty, thank you so much for joining us. I hear you might have a little reading for us, and then maybe you can tell us a little bit about your book.
I sure do. Let me find a good spot. All right. Can someone do the timer for me? You're going to do the timer. Going to tell me be quiet.
I got you covered.
Excellent. Annabelle, you've got to get up. Michael stretched to reach the discarded dagger. The hilt was just beyond his fingertips. The angel swayed unsteadily on his knees and went to drive the blade down toward the helpless nightmare's face. As she managed to roll it up for one moment, Michael grabbed hold of the dagger and threw it. The sharp weapon found little resistance in the angel's eye socket. The Grigori grasped at his face until his quivering fingers went limp. He collapsed beside Annabelle. The nightmare took a deep, shuddering breath. A light steam rose from her belly where the Grigori had gutted her. She trembled uncontrollably, succumbing to shock. Michael saw the pool of blood collecting beneath her. It trickled into the stream and turned the water crimson. He didn't need to see the wounds to know they were mortal. Sound off, Gunny. Going to roll. Her voice was faint and strained. Free yourself. Get away from these bastards. Not leaving you, Annabelle, Michael said. Even if I could, pretty sure my leg's broken. Christ, you're annoying. Annabelle laid her head on the ground and took a few shallow breaths. Good initiative, bad judgment, Special Agent Childs. With an agonized grunt, she fought to roll. There's more of them. Time to move out. Samael said to never leave the protection of my nightmare's back. That's if you're sitting on my back, not under it, idiot. Michael's mind raced through various tactical scenarios, but each of the potential outcomes ended the same, badly, until he remembered Samael's words. Nothing is more formidable than a horseman on his nightmare. Annabelle is your greatest ally and your greatest weapon. You're right, Annabelle. I am a fucking idiot. The answer's been right in front of my face this whole time. Samael practically spelled it out for me. Michael, they're coming. Michael snatched the dagger from the dead Grigori's skull and wiped the blade on his pants. Pagiel said I needed a weapon forged by an archangel. That weapon is you. He grabbed the fleshy fold of her neck and pulled himself up to her shoulder. Wiping away the dirt and grime, he stared at the crest of Nanquil. Annabelle raised her head, rolling one black eye back to look at him. If you do this, you become one of them, the horseman famine. I'm not going down without a fight, Michael said, and neither are you.
It was a lovely reading. I saw there's several people in the audience who are waiting with bated breath to find out what happens next, and I want them to have to wait because I am like that. How does it feel as a writer to be reading your words out of an actual factual book that someone printed who's not you from another country that put it in stores around the globe? There are several people in the audience who have the book right now. I mean, how does it feel to be reading your words out of that hefty tome?
Surreal. Sometimes it just doesn't even seem real. When someone brings the book to me to get it signed, I'm like, what are they bringing? What are they expecting me to do? It's like, oh, okay, you're on that next tier. Oh, okay, I can do that for you. And then I have to think of something to like write in the book. So just surreal. A very pleasant feeling, though, an accomplishment.
Patty, this is a question from a fan. If you were a horsewoman of the apocalypse, which one would you be and why?
Even though I'm partial to famine, I would really like to be pestilence because I've seen these really badass women shooting bows off of horseback, and it is beyond cool. Beyond cool.
Another question from a fan. What have you learned about yourself through the process of writing and publishing Forging a Nightmare?
That being a Black woman is very, very cool. And I should never be ashamed or afraid of that. I grew up in a white world that told me that to be beautiful, you had to be white with blonde hair and blue eyes. And Annabelle Raines taught me that that's not true at all. You can be very beautiful with beautiful dark skin and dreadlocks.
Piggybacking off of that, perhaps, who would you like to see cast in a movie version of Forging a Nightmare?
I can't think of her last name, but her first name is Renee, I believe. She played Kel Crest in Altered Carbon the first season, and I would love to see her be Annabelle because she's beautiful and she's tough and she's fierce.
What about poor Mike?
I could see Michael B. Jordan, maybe, potentially.
He's pretty. I could see that happening.
He is pretty.
Last question, last prepared question, Patty. If you could acquire one or more attribute of a horse, which would it be?
I would love the ears because horses' ears are so expressive, and Annabelle's ears are usually pinned to say, I'm pissed off and you need to stay away. Though that could be a bad thing because I think my ears would be pinned a lot.
Well, thank you very much. We have a very large audience here, as you can see. If there are questions from the audience, would you please unmute yourself, ask the question, and then mute yourself for the answer? Anyone?
What do you write in the books when you sign them for people? Do you try and think of different things for the individual, or do you just have a the same thing you do every time?
If it's someone that's close to me, I try to write something personal. And I think my catchphrase is going to be something like, may you walk the vestibule road in the company of a nightmare.
That's cool. Yeah, something related to the book. That's awesome.
Yeah.
A cool quote. I like that.
Patty, was the first scene you wrote the one that ended up coming first in the book, or was it something different?
No, actually, chapter 1 was the first scene in the book, but the publisher wanted a prologue from the bad guy's point of view, which kind of spooked me a little bit because that prologue is a little dark. And I was afraid that it was a little dark, but people seemed to like it. My mother thought it was a little dark, but she kept reading.
Patty, what has been your favorite response from a reader that you've heard so far of the book, like a reader or a reviewer, your favorite thing that someone has said?
My favorite thing came from Sophia in Nigeria, where she said she didn't know how she missed it, that the protagonist was a Black man with dreads. She's so used to someone not looking like her being in these stories, and to have someone look like her and have dreadlocks because she just started her journey with dreadlocks. She said it just meant so much more to her, and she really loved Annabelle.
So when you started the story, I know you changed your main character. Like did you start with the idea that he was a white guy?
Yeah, I did.
At what point did you decide you're like, screw this? I don't need to do this?
It might have been about the 5th edit into the book, and things just weren't gelling together. And I thought, you need to have someone that's unusual. And I remember going to the Renaissance Fair, and for the very first time, there was a knight there that was Black. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Was it hard to balance? I mean, it's a very dark, it comes from a dark place. It's set in hell. The main characters are the horsemen of the apocalypse, but it's very funny, and they're all very charming, and they're all very likable characters. So I wonder how you navigate that, where you're dealing with these symbols that other people might find to be kind of horrifying and scary or something, and you humanize them in this way that makes them, I mean, you've really taken them on and made them your own kind of characters. So talk about that, what was going through your mind, why you did that, and how you did that.
These people were going to become mentors for Michael, so I needed to make sure that they were likable in some fashion, even though they weren't necessarily perfect. And that created the history of the Four Horsemen. They didn't ever want to be the Four Horsemen. They were being punished because of something they allowed to happen. These were the angels who originally were watching Eden when Lucifer got in to tempt Adam and Eve. And their punishment was to become the Four Horsemen of the apocalypse. But if any one of them fell, another angel who is not necessarily in God's good graces had to take the place of that angel. So Samael is the original. The angel of death is the original, and it explains why. I believe pestilence is in the second rendition, and war is in the third. And if I'm not mistaken, Michael becomes the fourth famine.
Patty, it sounds like this book went through many different iterations and many sometimes dramatic transformations. At what point, do you finally decide, like, okay, it's done, like there's not going to be any more transformation happening? And sort of when did you know that you were finally there? And then how did that finally feel after kind of all this time to have it be done and you cannot tweak it anymore?
I think when it hit about 150,000 words, I'm like, okay, you're doing too much and you need to calm down. And I had been rejected 88 times, including by the agent that I currently have. And I was considering self-publishing at that point, and it was just going to happen because I loved the kid and I just thought the book would do really well regardless. And I actually had a contract offered to me by a very, very small press. And it was around that time that I was taking a query letter writing class with Sarah Megabo. And she asked all of us to send our query letters and our manuscripts in an email. Well, I sent the query, but not the manuscript. And she was like, hey, where's your manuscript? And I'm like, you saw it a year ago. You didn't want it. She goes, you've been working on it, haven't you? Yes. I'd like to see it. And then I told her also that there's this small contract, and she like scoped these people out. It was really funny. She had scoped them out and she goes, I think we could do better. Give me the weekend. So I did. And it's kind of a long story arc. But what happened is she came back with some line edits for the first 2 chapters, and it was a lot. And I thought, oh, okay, you've got to do this because the next agent, you're going to get the next agent. So I sent them back to her and she wanted to talk. And so we were talking, and the first thing she said, well, in this phone call, you will tell me to get lost because you don't like the suggestions that I made, or at the end of this phone call, I offer you representation. And she went on to talk, but I was stuck right there. And I'm like, did she just say she's going to offer? I didn't hear the rest. I heard something about she's very opinionated, she's picky, the industries. And then the next thing I heard was, I'm going to send you a contract and you can look it over. And then I was stuck there. And she talked some more about the industry, and there was something about not making a lot of money. But I was stuck on contract part. And then she was like, and I'd like you to come to a client meeting. And then I was stuck on that. So it was just this wonderful destiny, this domino effect that just kind of happened. And shortly after that, we got sent to manuscript boot camp where we lost 30,000 words. So that was what I thought was the final edition, but it really wasn't. That came with another editor, freelance editor for Angry Robot, which just sweetened it and just made the book better. And then Gemma came in with some things that I didn't always agree with, but I thought, okay, think about that. Does it make it a little bit better? And yeah, and I have my chubby kid on the block now. So that was a long-winded way of describing it, but it's been through a lot of changes that have just made it a better book.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. If anybody has a question for Patty, Hala.
Patty, in the reading you did, and in the other reading I heard you do, the sort of cracking action scenes. So, what part of writing, what aspect of it do you find the hardest? Because clearly you've got a gift for action.
Romance. And that's where I got hit hard with some people. They were trying to say that the romance just seemed forced. But I'm just kind of like, bitch, you have never dated me. There's me, and then there's a Mustang. You would be better proved to gentle a wild Mustang than to court me, because that's just not safe. I will tie you to the patient's pole. So romance for me, because I'm just not I'm a difficult creature, and I accept that. I'm the female version of Shrek. Get the fuck out my swamp. So
All right, Patty, thank you very much for coming to our very first Transspatial Tavern book launch.
Love it. You guys
really,
are awesome.
really good to have you. Nobody sign off, because we're just going to stop recording and then go on to our usual thing. But thanks for coming, and thanks for your fantastic questions. Rob Wolf, thank you for letting me steal all of your questions earlier. It was very cool. And that's it. I'm going to stop recording right now.